actually talking last night, and there's even more exciting things coming. But some of these things include CNN's Black in America series, HBO's Deaf Poetry Jam, BET Lyrics Cafe, Verses and Flows on TV1. He's also written tons of commercials for McDonald's, ads for Nike. He's appeared in commercials and vignettes for VH1, TV Land, Nick at Night. His work has earned him the 2006 Pro Max Gold for the best copyright in North America. He has a collection of poems and short stories called Conduit. That is actually one of our giveaways for people that attend today. We'll be giving away a few copies of, raffling off a few copies for attendees of John's Conduit. And it was #1 on Amazon for 16 weeks. It is my favorite. If you guys look at the BLACC book recommendations each month, this will be my April recommendation. Conduit will be my April recommendation. His debut novel, Midas, was released last fall, and it debuted as a #1 new title on Amazon. So I will also say I have known John personally since college, since I was in college. That's all I'll say. And you guys can figure out how many years that may or may not have been. So in addition to all of these amazing accolades, I am excited every time I see him. It's like I turn on my television. I didn't know he was, because he's also very humble, didn't know that he was doing this thing. And I'll be like, that's John. So in addition to being an incredibly talented poet and spoken word artist, he's just also a good person. Like I just described, like he's just a good dude. I won't talk about how I often set him up or attempt to set him up, but you guys can drop me a personal note. He's now newly single also. So without further ado, I wanted to turn it over to John Goode. We really are, I mean, in all honesty, we did want to focus on poetry as an art form and how it can often be used and has often been used in numerous instances as a form of protest. And so he will be presenting some of his pieces and talking through some of those, and with opportunities for us to reflect and discuss. So John, you can take it away.
Thank you so much, Phoenix. Thank you. I loved how this turned oddly into a tender moment, literally tender moment. All right, so my name is John Goode, and I'm going to do some poems for you today. I know we're discussing this idea of poetry as protest, also the idea of Black joy as resistance. And the interesting thing about the African-American experience in America is that no one else really comes to this country in chains with the idea of indefinite servitude. And so in that, when you think of resistance, I know you probably think of like fists in the air and raised voices and boots on the ground. But for us, singing a song is a form of resistance. Getting married at a time when you couldn't be married, jumping a broom is a form of resistance. The poetry, the joy, the laughter, all of it, we find resistance in just being joyful in a time and space where that was not what was expected. What was expected was just for you to work hard today and tomorrow and forever. So all of this poetry is resistance poetry, because love is resistance, poetry is resistance, and I love all this poetry. So here we are together on this fantastic afternoon, and it's good to be with you in the afternoon. I perform a lot at night in what my grandma would call the black dark. So it's good to be here while the sun is shining to do some poems for you. So you're gonna find that a lot of these poems are about my life. You're gonna find that my life is a lot like your life. People like to concentrate on how different we are. We have much more in common than we do differences. And we will illustrate some of those today. Also, as we're going along, I will open up some moments where we can have conversation, or if you just have a question that you want to throw into the chat, feel free. The thing that makes this special is that I get to share here with you today. These poems I'm going to do, most of these I've done a lot. I know these poems, I'm very familiar with them. The thing that makes this special is that I get to do them here for you today. You are here, I am here. We're creating a moment that cannot be recreated. It is special. And yeah, here we are, sharing this space, sharing this dialogue, sharing this conversation. So the first poem I'm gonna do is about my mother. During the course of this poem, you may discover that my mother is your mother. If you are old enough, maybe you are my mother. We shall find out together. This poem is called Barbara. Back in the day when I was young, I'm not a kid anymore, but some days I sit and wish I was a kid again. Mess up in school by the teacher, I'd get beat. Come home and I'd catch it from Miss Taylor across the street, and my mom would come along beating my butt on the lawn talking about wait till your daddy gets home. And I'm like, for what? I'm a little cat, I ain't got but so much but I swear she was determined she was gonna spank it all. Go get me a switch was the call, bring two. Cause I know how you and your sister do. See, kids will be kids, but moms will be moms. You done did what you did and mom's gonna show you right from wrong. I'm gonna tell y'all what some folks just don't understand. See, she won't trying to raise a friend. She was trying to raise a man. So every now and again, she had to raise her hand, but there was love in her means and there was love in her ends. But a lot of folks out here, they live in love less. They trying to raise a child they go to the club with, won't take their child to church, but together smoke cess. And if they cared more, maybe these kids wouldn't care less. I mean, y'all been to the mall and the grocery store. Y'all know these kids really run this show. I saw a kid curse his mom. He could have been no more than 4. Had that been me, I'd have been picking my little butt up off the floor. She'd have spanked me right there in the grocery store. She'd have spanked me right there on our phone. She'd have slapped my little butt on the way out the door, and I bet I wouldn't mess up in the store no more. I mean, I might not even go to the store no more. But those that don't know, let me tell you how it's supposed to go. You put sir and ma'am after everything you say. You get out them school clothes before you go out to play. You finish your homework before you think about going out. And before those street lights hit, you get your butt back in this house. But Billy mom let him stay out for an extra few. She was like, boy, I don't care what Billy mama do. I will beat you. I will beat Billy. I will beat Billy's mama too. That's how my mom used to do. She'd be coming for your issue. And just before bed on your forehead, gently kiss you, sing a song or two, or play a game with you, or spell your name with you, or teach you 2 and 2. I'm old school. I had that speaking spell, you know, cow goes moo. But let me ask you this. What in the world was a Pikachu? What was a Pokemon, a Furby? I mean, what was a Teletubby? I remember the simple days. It was like easy bake ovens and My Buddy, Barbie and Ken, G.I. Joe and the Schwinn, Rock'em Sock'em Robots. We used to play Connect 4. Pretty sneaky, sis, and they don't play games like that no more. And that's it, maybe because PlayStation and drove them crazy. House of the Dead, Doom, and Resident Evil have made them pretty good shots. Then the internet will lead you to where the guns get bought. Now you do the math, people, tell me what you got. It's like Columbine High, multiple gunshots. The parents standing around like, well, who would have thought? And I'm looking at them like, well, you should have thought. And you should have taught, and maybe you should have fought. My mom didn't assume she knew exactly what was in my room. Underneath the bed and in the dresser drawers, I'm like, but mama, that's mine. And she was like, ain't nothing up in here yours. She was like, you ain't paying no bills. And if you don't stop slamming these doors. There were bombs around my mom's. I was too busy doing chores, but I love my childhood. I don't know about yours. It was ice cream trucks in the summer, candy lady on the corner, hide and seek, kickball, dodgeball, trick or treat. Freeze tag, you're it, and tell me who could forget you and all your friends. And you'll put your foot in. Bubble gum in the dish. And how many pieces do you wish? In my neighborhood, that was like a hit. And you've got to admit that kids these days just don't know what they done missed. Back in the day, when I was young, I'm not a kid anymore. But some days I sit and wish I was a kid again. Thank y'all so much for listening to that poem. Good and kind, folks. I appreciate it so much. Yes. And this is the joy of poetry also. It takes you so many places. You get to laugh. You get to really, really like experience life. That one's very nostalgic. I don't know how many of you came up this same way with like the street light rules and the different aspects like this. Sure, a raise of hands, a show of hands if this was your experience also. If you had the whole street light experience, I would love to see it. Okay, all right. Yes, Phoenix. Yes, I see you. I see you. Oh, okay. I see the comments coming in through the chat. I see you guys. Oh man, you guys are so nice. So I'm gonna tell you a little bit about my experience. I don't know how many of you had a street light rule, but I'll explain it to you. If you came up with the street lights, you had to be in the house or at least within eye shot of the house before the street light came on. This was the rule. The rule did not bend, did not break, did not falter. Failure to adhere to the rule would cause you to be physically abused by your parents. That's just how it was. It's just how it was. I don't make the rules. I just know them. So in the neighborhood I grew up in, we had a playground about half a block up from the house. And at this playground was a street light by which all time was kept. And about 2 minutes before that street light would come on, it would start to hum. This hum is your 2-minute warning. You got 2 minutes to get your butt to the house. But you're young, You think you're, faster than time, smarter than your parents. Odds are you're not. So also at the playground, we had a bunch of kids that sat at the edge of the playground. Their entire job was, if they saw a woman in a house coat with some curlers in her head and some fuzzy slippers, making her way toward the playground, they would send up a general alarm. They would shout out, "Your mama is coming." It's their whole job. It's all they did. So we're at the playground. We're playing a little basketball. Street light begins to hum. We ignore it. Street light comes on. Kid shouts out. He says, "Your mama is coming." So we all stopped playing basketball because we didn't know whose mama was coming. So we say, whose mama is coming? They say, your mama's coming. So I jumped the fence. I ran down the street, cut over a street, ran up the back alley, jumped the back fence, ran in the house. Now, why I am thinking that she's not going to remember I wasn't there when she left, I don't know. I don't know what kind of mental deficiency it is I think she got, but she ain't got it. And now she done came home and she mad and she tired because them fuzzy slippers ain't really made for walking. So she looked at me. She said, "Where were you?" And I said, "Where was I? Where was I?" And I looked at her, I said, "I was here." She said, "Where were you, boy? And tell the truth." And it's the "and tell the truth" part that makes you feel like you gotta tell the truth, like she knows something you don't know. So I do what all kids do when you're caught in the middle of a vicious lie. I just started crying. And I started praying that my dad is gonna save me. But my dad is not that type of man. He is not that type of man at all. My mother and father, they're opposite people. Like my mother's a nice cultural woman. She's taking you to like art openings and museums. My dad's more of a street guy. Like he's, teaching you how to buy stolen goods from crackheads. Two very, very different people. How they meet and marry, I have no idea. But my father, he's a Black man in America, and he had to deal with a lot of things that we all deal with as people of color in America. And I was thinking about my dad around this time last year when we had the tragic killing of George Floyd. And I was invited to do a project with Dr. Fahamu Peku and Chellis Okori Johnson, a project called Human. So I wrote out a poem to kind of illustrate what our feelings and frustrations were in that moment and the moments before and the moments since. And there's a full video. I actually will put it in the chat. There's a video you can watch of the whole performance with me and Dr. Fahamu Peku and the amazing Chellis Okori Johnson. But here today, I'm just going to share the words of the poem with you, and it's called Human. The word human exists in a duality. Hue, the color you view when light enters, then passes through a prism or reflects off of me or you, and man. A state of personhood a person would be ascribed regardless of gender, respectively. But regretfully, when they see we, they see a hue that they imagine imbued with more of prison than prisms. And regretfully, they see no man. And it is that gets to me, that gets beneath my skin, literally. It is that like prisms and like prisons lead to the divisions that lead some to subtract lives. And in addition, where a friend might describe you as fit, there are others that will only ever say that you fit the description. Or they see conscript, they see convict, not a woman, a man of conviction. They don't see linchpin, they see lynching, and forever want to see your light, constrained and contrite in a prism, industrial, complex system. Oh, because they never want to see the anointed you. Just the lawyer appointed you, only your flaws are ever pointed to, and even those are seen skewed through a funhouse mirror's point of view. Oh yes, we've all become casualties of ad hoc fallacies and distorted realities because what they think they're seeing is not human, or at best just 3/5 of a human being, which only leads to dark assumptions. But to quote Iodele Heath, I ain't never been 3/5 of nothing. We are fathers who tired of living on our knees, so with your foot on our necks, we still stood to our feet. Mothers trying to make sure their kids eat, making a way out of no way, making sure ends that have never been friends meet. Sisters working at a Mickey D's and pursuing an undergraduate degree. Brothers hustling, working a 9 to 5 and then a 10 to 3. We are this, and we are everything in between. But they pretend to not see the we that we all still see. They pretend to only see minstrelsy and not a culture so rich that within our hieroglyphs still exist the keys to life's mysteries. They don't see lovers of art, of music, of words. All they see are people who have always been essential to the work, essential to picking up their cotton, their tobacco, their slack. All they see are hues, so all they see are blacks. and Mike Browns and Freddie Grays. They're quick to gentrify you from your home, then tell you to stay in your place. And when we speak up, they use the lead to make us pipe down. Statistics say an unarmed person of color is being shot right now. Because what's clear is that when your wife meets you at the door in her robe, tears in her eyes as you're about to hit the road and says, "Be careful, dear," it's because she knows you're being hunted, being chased day and night. Ahmaud Arbery thought he was out for a jog, didn't know he was in a race for his life. Because in this life, they don't know what it feels like to grip the steering wheel with all your might when you see those blue lights ride up in your rear view. Because although you know you've done nothing wrong, you still don't know if they will ever hear you and if you will ever be going home. That's why we try not to go off, because we know what's going on. We become dash cam, video, headline, poem. We become say her name, never again, hashtag, mourned. We're tired of being shot in the street, shot in our homes, shot in our sleep, shot on our lawns, shot by police, hands up, empty palms. We're tired of singing funeral songs and reciting funeral songs. We're tired. We don't know how better to explain this to you. And to be honest, we're tired of trying to. Tired of trying to explain it through statistics, through ballistics, through hue, through history, through injustice, both old and new. We're sick and tired of being sick and tired. Fannie Lou Hamer spoke the truth. We're tired of watching our elderly bury our youth. We're tired of feeling hopeless. We're tired of the government disenfranchising Black voters. I'm tired because Oluwatoyin died while I wrote this. I'm tired because Rayshard Brooks, he died while I wrote this. I'm tired because Dante Wright has died since I wrote this. I'm so tired I forgot to mention Breonna Taylor's name, and you're so tired you probably forgot to notice. I'm tired, but I'm committed to the fight, come whatever, because the same prism that was used to break the light apart can be reversed and used to bring the light back together. We are the light. We are in this fight together. We are the light. We are in this life together. We are the light. Let's come back together because we are the light. We are the light. We are the light. Thank y'all for listening to that poem. They are good and kind folks. So I know that poem, those two poems take a sharp juxtaposition. One is a reminiscent poem, it's full of joy and laughter, and the other one is a poem that really strikes to the heart of the protests and everything you've seen in the street. Of course, the chat is always open if you have questions. The wonderful and amazing Phoenix with this fantastic flowery blouse on will field your questions and get them to me. I think it's always important to remember that in these situations that we are the light that can make things different. As Dr. King said, darkness cannot drive out darkness, only the light can be that. And we need to be the light that pushes things forward, that helps us see a brighter day. I hope you will join us in the continued fight and push towards such endeavors. Boom, all right. If there are no questions in the chat, we will move forward into some more poetry.
No questions, only beautiful comments.
Only beautiful comments, fantastic. Look at this, man. Listen, y'all are spoiling me. You're spoiling me now. Oh, gonna know how to do more of these daytime shows, these nighttime shows. So it was my father, thinking about my father, that that made me, part of what drove the creation of that poem. And our parents, as we grow up, our parents are trying to, of course, give us the things we need to move forward in this life, to be productive citizens. So they try to give us advice, especially when you're small. So you may have heard things like, if someone hits you, you can hit them back. Some of you may have heard this. Raise a show of hands, you may have heard this. Or you may have heard something like, you can't start a fight, but you're allowed to defend yourself. Some of you may have heard this also, that's possible. My father was like, no. My father was like, listen, you swing first and you swing often. He said, you're too light to fight. You're too thin to win. If you let somebody hit you first, you could die. So when I was about 12 years old, I was at that playground. I was probably about 10 years old. I was at that playground up the street. And I was about to get in a fight with this kid. And me and this kid, we're both 10 years old. And I don't know if he had some kind of glandular issue, but he was a grown man. It was crazy. It's like smoking, drinking, driving. I was like, what's going on with this kid? So of this wonderful group of amazing people in the room, I I don't know how many of you have ever been in a fight before. I can't even assume. It's 101 people. Wow, look at this. It's 101 people here. Of this 101 people, I don't know how many of you have ever been in a fight before. But I'll tell you something about fighting. You may, let me find out, Phoenix. Let me find out. Let me find out. I'll tell you something about fighting you may or may not know. God in his wisdom and his omniscience has seen fit to put at the scene of every fight in the world, for the weak, for the frail, for those who do not fight very often. God has put at the scene of every last single fight in the world a brick. You can be where there's never been people, never been construction. You'll look down and magically there will be a brick. It is there for me. It is there for you. It's so that we might smite the giant. So I'm looking now for this brick, but I can't find it. And I think to myself, I look up and see my father come to the playground, and I think to myself, this is wonderful. If this thing goes long and wrong, I'm sure my dad will jump in. So me and this kid, we get shoulder to shoulder. We push shoulders for 2 or 3 minutes. I don't know what that's about, but we did it. And then I pushed that kid, and it was the worst decision I could have made in that moment. That kid balled me up like a piece of paper. It was not attractive in any kind of way. So of the 101 people in this room who've been in a fight, I don't know how many of you have ever lost a fight, but I will tell you something about losing a fight you may not know. Once you lose a fight, you have to lay there on the ground and take an inventory of your body to see what works and what no longer works. Like, this arm is all right, this leg is okay, I'm gonna need these ribs. So I'm dusting myself off and I'm standing up. And at the age of 10, I was a painfully thin child. I mean, I am thin now, I was thinner. And I had what may have been the most pronounced overbite in the history of man. It was that overbite where it always looked like you smiling a little bit. You ever seen that overbite? It was that overbite where you could bite into a sandwich and damn near clip your fingernails. You ever seen that? That's the one I had. It was serious. So I've stood up, I've dusted myself off. The entire playground is cleared out. Only person left at the playground is my father. So I say to him, I say, Daddy, did you happen to notice that there was a fight here today? He said, oh yeah, I saw that fight. Yeah, I said, look, there's a fight going on. It's clearly a fight. There it is. I said, oh, father of mine, did it perchance cross your field of vision that it was indeed me, your son, in said fight here today? He said, no, it was clearly you. I looked over. I said, there he is. He's in a fight. That guy, he's fighting. And I said, well, why didn't you jump in, Dad? Why didn't you help me in my hour of need? Why'd you leave me out there like that? And he said, with a straight face, he said, to be honest with you, son, the way you were smiling, I thought you was winning. And this is partly why I do poetry. It's really a form of therapy to help me get through things. But I was thinking about this situation with Dad, and I wrote out this poem called 9 about how life in and of itself can be like a fight. Laying on my back, staring at the sun, I'd begun to think about the first time I'd ever been knocked down to the ground. It was back when I used to stay around the corner from the neighborhood playground, and I cannot even say now what the fight was even about. This kid hit me in the nose, I fell down, rose, hit that kid in the mouth, and that's just about where it all begins and ends. We didn't hold any punches, but didn't hold any grudges. And 30 minutes after boxing, me and that kid were best friends. All was forgotten and all was forgiven. And some say turning the other cheek is for wimps, geeks, and women, but anyone can give in and strike out with aggression. We beefed like boys, but walked away like men, and therein lay a valuable lesson. So now, laying on my back, staring at the sun, I begin to roll to where my elbow bends, and my mind continues to spin around to the second time I can remember being knocked down to the ground. It was by my dad. Hit me square in the chest after I had brought home bad grades. With tears in his eyes, he stayed still and stated, I ain't hit you half as hard as reality will if you grow up black, poor, and uneducated. So I got to my feet and eventually matriculated to college, where in 4 or 5, 6 years, I eventually graduated. It was clear he hadn't wasted his physical conversation on education and progression. Some would call it tough love, but love is a tough world. And therein lay a valuable lesson. So now I stopped staring at the sun. I looked down to the ground, pushed myself up to my knees. The third time had to be when I was roughly 15. I just seen the movie Breaking, decided I was in love with this girl named Arlene. She was Haitian. And although she was taken, to me, it seemed she was mine for the taking, but her boyfriend's fist decided to remind me about touching other people's things and possessions. They say trying to tend other people's garden is how yours goes rotten. Therein lay a valuable lesson. Now, the fourth had to be when my parents got divorced. Well, they didn't really get divorced. They just kind of decided they won't marry no more. The fifth had to be after I enlisted in the Marine Corps. They called me in my college dorm. They said, we call this Operation Desert Storm, and your black behind is going to war. The sixth had to be when my lady had told me that she had missed her period. At a period in my life when I just wasn't ready to hear it. But I got my head on straight and couldn't wait for the date that my baby would awake, look at me and smile. And the seventh had to be while, in her second month, my lady miscarried the baby. And the doctors had to say to me, I'm sorry, Mr. Goode, but there will be no child. And the sky turned dark. My heart and world turned gray. I'd been knocked down and out, thought I had nothing left to say. I was down for the count, thought I'd never stand on another stage. But I stand here today to say to you that life is a fight and you're gonna get knocked down a time or two. It's a 15-round bout and you bound to lose a round or two. But I'm gonna tell you what you do. Between rounds, you gotta breathe, prepare and pray to get you through. During rounds, you stick and move, you think win, never lose, and therein lay a valuable lesson. Because just when I thought I was down for the count, just then I started thinking about all my life's blessings and moved from my knees to my feet. Because in this fight against life, we all gonna have to stand and greet our fears and our fate face to face. And when you meet, you look them in the eye straight, held up by nothing but your beliefs and your faith. Because if life knocks you down 7 times, you're gonna have to stand up 8. Thank y'all so much for listening to that poem, good and kind folks. I'm gonna take a sip of water. And if you have any questions, you let me know.
We do have a couple questions, and that is so moving, John. I've never heard you perform that one, and it was really lovely.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So we have 2 questions that have come in. The first question is, do you write your poems? How do you write your poems? Does it come as a burst? Do you work on them?
It comes in different ways. So sometimes it comes all at once. I'm going to do a poem. The next poem I'm going to do actually, it's called Mastectomy. This poem came to me all at once while sitting at my mother's kitchen table. It showed up almost in its entirety. I did very little editing. It's what they call a gift poem. It just shows up. And then some take quite some time to write. So that poem, the one I just did 9, I think it took me 5 months to write that poem. Like it was just, and the end came first. So the very end of that poem was the first thing I thought of was the, if you get knocked down, the poem, 8, if you got knocked down, you got to stand up. So that whole thing came to me at the end. 8, if you get knocked down 7 times, you got to stand up 8. It came to me at the end, and then I worked my way back to the beginning because I was like, oh, there's a story in here. Like I've been knocked down several times in life, and you just have to keep getting up. So they come in a variety of ways. I think the trick is just to honor the poem, to sit with it, don't rush it. When you get to the very end, once you know it's done, sometimes you get like a Spider-Man tingly spider sense, and you're like, oh, that's good. That's a good one. So that's a good one. So that's pretty much how I create these poems. It's so random.
Well, we have some other ones, but I want to intersperse them. Next time you need a drink of water. We'll throw them in.
Okay, I thought we have 2, or that's good.
There are more coming in. So do you want more questions now, or do you want to get into mastectomy?
I'll do one more. I'm gonna do one more, and then I'm gonna get into that poem.
Okay. So the next question is actually from one of our authors, Renee Shea. Thank you for joining, Renee. And Renee's question is, who's the little boy over your shoulder, the photo over your shoulder?
Oh, yes. So the little boy in the photo over my shoulder is me. This is actually me as a baby. And also with this photo is a photo of me and my father. I was in my Marine Corps uniform and he was in his Army uniform. So this photo sits just over here on the book stand. But yeah, this is how I started. This is me and Dad in our uniforms taking photos. I was 18 and he was not 18.
We did have a thank you for your service.
Oh, absolutely. No, it was my distinct honor. Absolutely, my distinct honor. So another part of what I do when I create poetry is other people's stories sometimes like visit me. Like people will tell me their stories, or the stories will show up and I get to write them out. So I'm gonna do at least 2 poems that are One is a poem that just came to me completely, and one is an amalgamation of stories that were told to me by friends that I crafted into one piece. So this particular poem, it began with a woman I saw on a MARTA train. She had recently had a mastectomy. She'd had one of, yes.
People may not know MARTA if they're not from
Oh,
Atlanta.
so MARTA is the transit system in Atlanta, MARTA, Metro Atlanta Rapid Transit Authority. The rapid is an interesting term. But yes, MARTA. So I was on the MARTA and I'd run into a lady who'd had a mastectomy, which is she'd had a breast removed due to cancer. And she was so upbeat, she was so chipper. She was just wonderful. And at the time I was headed to work, I was working as an accountant at the time, and I was rumbling and grumbling and I was so unhappy. And I was thinking to myself, who am I to be sad or mad in any way when this lady who has been fighting for her life can find a smile and find a kind word and find so much joy? It was an interesting moment of perspective for me on a rapid train. And then the second, the second person I asked to dedicate this poem to is my great grandmother, who lived in the mountains of Virginia. And her name was Rosie Starkey. She was very much so a mind over matter type person. So when she was about 60, she went to the doctor and the doctor told her that she had cancer. And she said to the doctor, is this so? He said, it is so. She said, you're sure? He said, I am sure. She said, okay. So then she came home. And when she got home, we said, Granny, did you go to the doctor today? She said, I did. We said, what did the doctor say? She said, don't you know that man tried to give me cancer? And this is just how she thought about it in her head. And she went on to live to be 100 years old. She died in 2005. She was born in 1905. And that was my great grandmother, Rosie. So I dedicate this poem to these two amazing women. It's called Mastectomy. It's actually in my collection of poems and short stories called Conduit. I'm pretty sure I know this completely by heart, but I have it right here just in case I don't know what I think I know. All right. And she was the definition of beauty. She was tall. She was completely bald. She was fresh out of recovery from her mastectomy. And being a breast amputee made her no less of a woman than me. I mean, those lumps of flesh across her chest made breasts, but breasts have never made a woman. And breasts never made she. And she held her head high with a sense of peace in her eyes that could not be denied and could not be described or explained if I tried, sustained by her sense of faith and her sense of pride. As she began to walk, you could sense it in her stride. And she stuck her chest out and dared your eyes not to notice that the disappearing act was a fact and not some hocus pocus. That's how I came to hear what she said to a man who came near to offer his condolences. She said, I want you to understand and please know this. Yes, I've second guessed God and at times asked why. And yes, alone in the dark, I oft times cry, but when my eyes are blessed to greet a new day, I understand I have to live at least 2 days today. And I understand in some way this is all in God's plan. So I've laid my burdens down and taken up God's hand. Because when the chemo goes long, and I'm not so sure that I can go on, God gives me a shoulder I can lean and rely on. And when I don't want any more, ensure. And I'm not so sure that I can endure anymore. And I fall to the floor, not wanting to die, but not truly understanding what I'm living for. Not understanding who I am, not understanding what am I to do. That's when God takes me in his arms and he carries me through. And yes, people love comparing me to the strong and the brave from Ali to MLK, but what I do is not brave because I, just like they, do what I have to do. Step in my doctor's shoes, you'll see neither my shoes nor my soul had walked an easy road, but I remember being told, it's not the path you choose, it's the path that chose you. The same quandary faced Luke, Mark, John, and Matthew. So I laugh at those who view this as a tragedy. It seems sad, you see, but I used to live the life of sad, you see. So don't be sad for me. This had to be. Sometimes the buildings destroyed in catastrophes were simply blocking some things you had to see. And right now, let me clear up some of the fallacies associated with my malady, though the chemo leaves me weak. My soul is so complete that even when I cannot speak, you can see, feel, and hear me through my smile. And when this earthly host is gone and my ghost is carried home, I'll live on through a poem and be reborn as a child floating down the Nile. Though I may have cancer, cancer will never have me. Bald with one breast, I am more and no less than any woman you will ever see. I am yesterday, I am tomorrow, I am now and forever me. I never asked for your pardon or revelry. Never asked you to pity or revel me. My mind is more concerned with the current turns taken in society. You know, just the other week, I saw the Passion of Christ on a movie screen. I saw his pain depicted in some very moving scenes, but if I can't find the passion of Christ in everyday human beings, then 300 mil in ticket sales, what does it all mean? Understand that these infants, these seeds that we've sown will grow into little visions of we. My trials and tribulations have shown it's so much bigger than me. I'm trying to see these acorns grow into bigger and better trees. And I would give the other breast if I thought that would help you to see and believe. And on that note, she turned to me. She gave a smile. She took her leave, and she was, oh, so beautiful. Thank y'all for listening to that poem right there. Good and kind of folks. So kind, so nice. Excellent. All right. Quick sip, just quick sip. I'm glad I knew it. I had the book just in case, but
well, John, that actually is one of the questions that we had that came in. So the question was, do you memorize these? Because there's so many interesting turns of phrase. So do you tend to memorize, or are you reading from something?
I memorize the greater majority of everything that I do. I feel like it gives you a freedom in performance. It allows you to move and move your hands and really control pitch and tone when you know it really well, when you got it like kind of in your bones and your spirit. That's why I had the book here, but in my head, I was like, I feel confident you know this poem. So it was good to know that I do know it. And I was blessed. I got to perform that poem with the Breast Cancer Survivors Choir here in Atlanta. Yeah, that was like a blessing to be able to share the work with people who this work is so intimate with, and to have it resonate with them. And I was able to give them all copies of that poem. So yeah, that was a wonderful blessing. Oops, are you muted? Did I lose you?
Yeah, someone also dropped in the chat that every child, every boy should hear 9.
Oh, yes, yes. I'm sorry. I think I might have even misquoted. The name of that poem is actually 8, but yes, I'm with it. It's interesting. Like I'll read that poem, I'll recite that poem some nights on stage, and I wrote it. It's about my life, and it still sometimes impacts me in an interesting way. Like people will say, they were like, some nights on stage you look like you get lost in that poem, and I was like, I think it's like an interesting reminder to myself about life. So yeah.
And I have one raised hand. I don't know if that was a mistake or not. Robin, did you have something? Is that a? All right.
Sarah said, now I want to share the poem with my mom of almost 30 years. Oh, absolutely. Anyone who wants a copy of that poem, I will make sure you get it. It's in the book, but also if you just need a copy of it, I will make sure you can get a copy of that poem. I feel like that poem doesn't even feel like it's my poem. It feels like it's for people who have survived breast cancer, people who are dealing with it. It feels like it's their poem. It doesn't even feel like my poem. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Cool. So let's do another poem. All right. So we're talking about Black joyous resistance. We're talking about poetry as protest. And one of the things I mentioned earlier is this idea of love, what it means, especially classically in America, at a time when African Americans were not allowed to marry, for them to take each other's hands, jump a broom, and then before their community and their God say, we are married. I don't care what anyone else says. We have decided we are together. Love has always been, this has always been, it's always been like a form of revolution for us. So when I think about love, I grew up in Richmond, Virginia, and I grew up in this neighborhood called Oak Grove, Belmead, Blackwells on the south side of Richmond. And I grew up with these amazing like Black women. Like I grew up in this Black neighborhood. This is so funny. Someone in here, Natalie Wolf, she said, could we possibly hear the poem Dark? Absolutely, that's what I'm gonna do right now. So I grew up in this neighborhood with these amazing Black women. And they were incredible. They were like black, like so black it make you nervous. These type of women, like kind of girls put on lotion, look like patent leather, these kind of girls I grew up with. So they would say, hey, John, they don't really put you in, put us in music videos or anything like this. What could you do? So I was like, all right, I'm gonna write this poem as a dedication to these women back home. So this poem is called Dark. Natalie? It's called dark. So this is that. No matter what kind of dating you get into, look, I ain't hating on you. You got to do what you do. I mean, this day and age, you better love who loves you. But as for me, I love to see these women that are dark. I mean, dark is an African tribal dancer standing on the Tropic of Cancer during a lunar eclipse on the summer solstice. Behold this solstice. I mean, dark is the singers of mid-60s soul hits. She absorbs everything around like black holes or black hands holding biscuits, sopping up fish and grits. In other words, she's attractive. She proceeds for progress with no stress. She's proactive and she's dark. Dark, well-rounded, well-grounded, like the bark and roots found in the history of old oaks that may bend in the wind, but never broke. Dark, well-rounded, well-grounded, like the roots and history of old Black folks that may bend in racial winds, but never broke. I mean, dark is the night the slaves took flight from murderous cotton fields where they were whipped, raped, and killed. God, their rod, in the darkness that envelops them, their shield. God, their rod, in the darkness of melanin, their shield. God knows, I love them, dog. I mean, dark is the world through the closed eyes of a fetus. Dark is the world through the open eyes of these elitists. Dark is the open lies that some of the institutions have tried to feed us. Dark is scriptures, descriptions, and depictions of Jesus. Dark is the history of Uncle Tom, Uncle Ben's, and Uncle Remus. Dark is the audience that was there the night I came to hear Nina Simone sing, "Black is the color of my true love's hair." I like her so dark. In fact, if she were to lay on black sheets, you'd have to question if she was there. I love them that dark. I mean, dark is dirty oil. Dark is fertile soil. Dark is the prison population down in Macon. Dark is the past we just left and the future we're facing. Dark is the patrons who stay in the establishments of agents. Dark is the mental outlook of kids still hooked on those PlayStations. Dark is the heart of a racist instilled and filled with hate. Dark is those dudes and dashikis that ironically most other women date. Dark is that coffee looks that Phoenix has got in her office. Dark is my finances look back when Bush had gotten into the office. Dark. Dark is Johnny Unitas' signature hot tops. Dark is these plots to divide us and have us fighting for these blocks. Dark is the cookies they got to make Hydrox. Dark is the eyes of a junkie high on crack rocks. Dark is the fact that the government is prone to get you off of heroin, hook you on the methadone. So you can pay them with your drug money, still be a junkie. Dark. Dark is the grandmother land. Dark is my grandmother's hands that clapped in church on Sunday morning. Dark is Hawaiian coast that boasts of black sands. Dark is the glove held high above by Black Olympians as they took the victory stand and throughout history took a stand for victory. I like the skin on these women to be so dark, you understand that women trying to catch a tan cannot help but hate it. Like this lady to be so dark, she could go to funerals naked. I mean, darker than the deepest depths of a well, so dark, Satan would look at her and be like, "You are black as hell." I mean, say, hey, no matter what kind of dating you get into, I ain't hating on you because you got to do what you do. I mean, this day and age, you better love who loves you. Thank you, Doc. There you go, Natalie. There it is. There it is, Natalie.
Oh, that was Natasha. Thank you. I'm
oh,
sorry.
Natasha? Oh, Natasha.
Thank you,
Thank
John.
you, Natasha.
So while your rest are drinking up, there was a question. Zena, I'm trying to scroll back through. Zena was nice enough to put them all.
Oh, thank you, Zena.
When did you write your first poem?
So the first poem I actually ever wrote was I wrote in college. I know a lot of people have this story where they wrote a poem when they were 5 years old about a muskrat. That's not my story. I wrote a poem. The first one I wrote was in college, and drum roll, you never would guess it was for a young lady. That's right. That's what happened. I wrote a poem for a young lady, but then I never showed it to her. I was too shy to show it to her, but that's the first poem I wrote. And then when I moved to Atlanta in 1998, a friend dragged me to an open mic where I saw the most amazing poets I've ever seen. And I thought to myself, if I work really hard and try with great effort, it's possible that I could maybe do what they're doing. And that's when I started writing performance poetry, was after going to the Yin Yang Cafe on 3rd and Spring Street, downtown Atlanta.
Street. Okay. One more question, and then the next piece. Actually, I have a question. Are you going to do the one Soul Aching?
Yes, let's do that next then.
No, you don't have to do it next. I just want to make sure that you'll get there.
Let's see, we got about 13 minutes. No, it'll have to be next. Yeah, it'll be next. Because I got that poem, a story, and another poem.
Okay. All right. Whenever you're ready.
Okay. There are all the questions. All right. So this poem was inspired by a couple of things. The first thing is Representative Todd Akin. He'd gone on television and he had forwarded this idea of what he called legitimate rape. He said that if a woman has been legitimately raped, that there's no way that she can become pregnant from this attack, that her body will shut down the processes by which the pregnancy can happen. And I thought to myself that this is an amazing advertisement for how we must continue to fund education, because clearly this man does not know how the human body works. This is not a true thing. So I was thinking about Representative Akin and his statement, and in talking about it and discussing it, I was speaking with friends of mine, young women I know, and they, many of them began telling me stories about how they had been abused in this way. And it was jarring because you would have never imagined and or guessed that they were holding this trauma and this tragedy inside of them. But when it came up, a shocking number of women are like, oh yes, I have been in this situation in college with a boyfriend, with a husband. Like it's amazing. And it also made me think of the quote where they asked men, they said, when it comes to dating interactions with women, what is it that you fear the most? And men overwhelmingly said, I'm afraid that somewhere during the interaction, she will laugh at me. They asked women in a dating interaction with men, what is it you fear the most? And women overwhelmingly said, I'm afraid that during the dating interaction, he will kill me. And I thought it was jarring, the juxtaposition of the two, that men's greatest fear is to be laughed at, and women are going into these situations with like, I don't know if I will get out of this thing alive. And that's truly telling in many ways, and something to think about, especially as we raise this new group of young men in the world, to discuss with them, the ways in which women have to be guarded, protected, the way women should be seen, viewed, and treated. I know I've said a lot, so here comes the poem. So this poem is an amalgamation of the stories that all of these women told me. It is it's called Soul Aching. Some people call it legitimate rape. I will have the book in my hand to make sure I get this one right, because I just feel like this is another poem that doesn't feel like my poem. It feels like the poem of everyone who contributed to it to help me write. All right. She walks to the police station shaking, her pantyhose and nose running, her mind racing, her innocence easy to behold, once golden, now taken, stolen. She walks in holding her shirt down to where her skirt once lived. She's holding back anger, back pain, back tears. Others are pacing or impatiently waiting to complain, to report petty crimes as they look, they doubt, they leer, they sneer. Finally, an officer comes out, comes over, comes near, leans in, comes closer and says, so what brings you here? And through clenched teeth, tears, and mascara smears, bald fists, trembling lips, torn clothes, and a ripped soul, she looks at him and says slowly, I have been raped. And he turns his head to an angle. He looks from her foot to her ankle, to her thigh, to her breast, to her chest, mentally undressing and re-raping her with his eyes. Then he begins to berate and harangue her. He says, was it a stranger or were you on a date? What kind of shirt did you have on? Was your shirt short or long? Did you flirt, play along? Were you on the make? Oh, this is just due diligence. Make no mistakes, miss. I'm not saying you're at fault. I'm just trying to figure out if this was a legitimate rape. And in her mind begins the debate, what in truth constitutes legitimate rape? Is it housewives with fire and daggers in their eyes, faking it and taking it their entire married lives because that's what their moms did? Is it forgotten little kids that you'll never know, snatched from their homes, bus terminals, skid row, and sold as sex slaves in the home of the brave, Brazil, Negril? Russia, Mexico? Is it the plight of the Native American and Australian Aboriginal in a fight in a place they call home with no place to call home? It's a site of blight and disease, blankets filled with pox to rock their young to sleep, memories of Pine Ridge, Hawkesbury, and Wounded Knee. Or is it the preachers and priests that take the liberties with the least of these, snakes that slake their desires with the boys' choir, beware the mitre and the muscle tee? Or at least it must be the oppression and suppression of Africa's voices, resources, identity. Could it be building a nation with forced slavery, or what the French did to the Haitians in 1783? What the Germans did to the Jews, what financial institutions do daily to me and you, what Monsanto is doing to the world's food, what pharmaceutical companies are doing to the world's youth. Don't misconstrue or get it confused. Is this not in truth what legitimate rape constitutes? Well, maybe. But could it not also be a woman walking home alone, not conscious of what she's got on her back, thinking she has the right to wear what she likes without being attacked when she feels a knife to her throat and her skull being cracked? Is it rape if she said no, fought, and cursed the act? Is it still rape if she said no, but thought not to make it worse, so she didn't fight back? Is it rape if she screamed in a way deemed to raise the alarm? Is it rape if she spoke softly in an effort to keep him off? She spoke very calm. Is it rape if she said no and kicked, trying to harm him? Is it still rape if she said no, but since I can't stop you, please just wear a condom? Now she's looking at the officer with whom she's lodging her complaint. His eyes are darting, trying to figure out what it is and what it ain't. That's when she grabs his face in full attention, pulls him in close to ensure that he's listening, and says, let me be frank. My rape does not become legitimate when you say so. My rape became legitimate when I said no. And that's that poem. All right. And that's a heavy poem. If you have any questions, anything you'd like to ask and or know, the chat is open. I'm here to discuss it with you. There were roughly 7 or 8 of my friends that told me their stories about the incident and the aftermath of the incident. And then this poem was crafted from what they said. And they all asked to remain anonymous. They didn't, they were like, these are stories that their families, their parents don't know, their husbands don't know. A lot of people don't know that people have been through such trauma. And I was actually honored that they felt comfortable enough to share it with me.
Thank you for sharing. It feels like from the comments, people have the same reaction that I have every time I hear that. It's just so powerful and moving. So thank you.
Thank y'all. Thank y'all for listening so
much. We have questions, but do you want questions, or you want? I know you have at least one more.
I do. Oh, we have 5 minutes left.
Okay, we'll hold on a couple minutes for the Q&A if you want to, and we can also just ask you, and you can answer, and we can share in the recording later if people want to hop. So yeah, you could just.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you a story, and then I'm going to do a poem for you. The story is the thing I try to tell people, no matter what, whether I'm in a nightclub, at a college, or on a Zoom, as I try to encourage everyone to, as much as humanly possible, to be themselves. This would seem easy because you are you, so being you should not be that difficult, but it seems to be harder than one might imagine. And I understand why. You turn on the radio, every song sounds like the last song you heard. Like, everyone can't sound like Cardi B and Drake, but clearly they're trying to. You go to the movies, and every movie is a remake of a movie you've already seen. They just put out King Kong versus Godzilla again. So there's clearly a currency for imitation that makes it seem like it would be hard, just to be who you are. So Zena's here. Zena has a wonderful smile. She's been smiling and laughing with me all afternoon long. And I can say to myself, I would like to smile the smile that Zena smiles. And every time you saw me, you'd be like, that's that dude with that bootleg Zena smile. And I don't want to be the bootleg Zena smiler. This is not my desire for myself. But in the course of trying to smile like Zena, I'd be doing 2 things. The first thing is I'd be trying to do an impossible thing, because only Zena can smile. Zena smile. The second thing is I would be erasing my original imprint from the planet, because I wouldn't be smiling my smile. I'd be trying to smile Zena's smile. And I should smile my smile. It's not a bad smile. You should see it. So This is what goes on all over the planet all the time. People trying to be something that they are not. So some years ago, there was a show on TV called HBO Deaf Poetry. Anyone seen that show? Anyone? No one. That's why it's canceled today. Just you. Oh, look, a few hands. Okay. So when you wanted to get on HBO Deaf Poetry some years ago, you had to send a video of yourself doing poetry. So I sent this video up to New York City, and they called me back at my house and said, yeah, we got your tape. We do not care for what it is you do. You had to do something more exciting. Like maybe while you're doing your poem, you could like do a little dance, fall into a split, something we've never seen before. And I thought to myself, that's exciting. I would like to see that myself, but that's not exactly what I do while I'm doing the poems. So I did not make it onto the program that year. Next year rolls around, the good people from HBO, they called me at my house and said, hey, John, this is HBO Deaf Poetry. We're accepting tapes. Would you like to submit a tape? I said, I would love to submit a tape. So I sent them the exact same tape I sent the year before. They watched it. They said, yeah, no, we don't care for this. You have to do something more exciting. Maybe you could like do a backflip, burst into flame, something we've never seen before. And I thought to myself, that sounds exciting. I would like to see that myself, but that's not exactly what I do while I'm doing the poem. So I didn't make it on the program that year. Third year rolls around. HBO, they call me at the house and say, hey, John, we're taking tapes. Would you like to send a tape? I said, I would love to send you a tape. So I sent the exact same tape I sent the 2 years before because I figured this is me. If you don't like this, you don't like me. And they were like, we don't like you. You have to do something more exciting. Maybe you could do a cartwheel, shoot a ping pong out your bum, something we've never seen before. And I was like, I'm just not into ping pongs like that. So the fourth year I said, forget it. Forget it. They don't like me. Forget it. That year, as God would have it, local radio station, Hot 107.9. They call me at the house and they say, hey, John, HBO Deaf Poetry is coming to town to do a show at the Fox. We want your company to handle all the promotions for this show. And I thought, this is incredible. I don't even listen to your radio station. I don't know how you got this number. But they sent the check. I cashed the check. I figured I should do something. So I threw a competition. Top 2 winners got to open up at the Fox Theater. A girl named Freedom and a girl named Renita won. Freedom opened up on a Friday night. Renita was supposed to open up on a Sunday afternoon. She called me on Saturday and said, John, I can't do it. I have to unexpectedly leave the country. Now, what makes you have to unexpectedly leave the country? I don't know. I just accepted it. And my sister said, you should go down there and open up. I said, all right, I'll go down there and open up. You know, Sunday matinee show in Atlanta. Ain't nobody gonna be there. Everybody gonna be in church. But yeah, I'll go. So I went down there to open up. And as God would have it, the guy who ran HBO Deaf Poetry, I know Russell Simmons, his name is real big on it, but a guy named Stan Lathan, Sanaa Lathan's dad, ran the show. He came to this random matinee show in Atlanta. He stuck his head in the green room. He said, you opening up? I said, yep. He said, well, I'm gonna be watching you. I said, well, I'm gonna be watching you too. It's gonna be some mutual watching up in here. So I went on stage and I did the first poem, the poem about my mom. I got a standing ovation. Stan came backstage. He said, I love that poem. You know, we gotta try to get you on a show. Like, do you have like a tape or something? I said, it just so happens I do have a tape, Stan. So I gave him the same tape I've been sending these people for 3 or 4 years. He watched the tape. He called me 2 weeks later and said, we love it, John. We're gonna book you for the show. And this showed me that you, just by being yourself, can get to where it is you're trying to go. It might take you a little longer than you would like. It might be a bit more arduous than you would care for it to be. But if you believe in your talents, if you hone your craft and stick to your guns, you can get there. Everything you need, whether it be the opportunity of a lifetime or a random brick at the playground, it's all at your feet. You just got to look for it. All right, with that in mind, I'm gonna do this last poem. We can get to any questions if we have time. And I know I see some people have to go. Thank you so much if you have to go. Thank you so much for coming, for sharing this time and sharing this space and sharing in this conversation. So this last poem is about, I wrote this to honor Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I was in Tennessee driving past the Lorraine Hotel, thinking about what it means to be Dr. King, the intestinal fortitude it would take to get a group of people their civil rights under the threat of being shot and killed. For all intents and purposes, he had taken this on as his life's mission. And I was like, man, like some days I wouldn't go to work just because I was tired. God forbid they want to shoot me, I'd never go. So I was like, wow, how strong is this man with such threat to push forward for this? So I scribbled out this poem. It's called Me, God, and Destiny. And this will be my final poem. So I keep having this reoccurring dream. And in this dream, I sit alone in a room in Tennessee. And it's just me, my God, and my destiny. And I tell you, I feel like I've given the world the best of me, but now I can hear the balcony, and the balcony is calling for the rest of me. And I can hear his sweet song like the sirens of the Odyssey. And it's gotta be the American melting pot that unlocked the recipe for this tragedy. That took warriors, kings, and queens from their homeland, had them shown they were 3/5 of human beings. It was America who tried to convince them of this, adding gashes from masters' fists and heavy lashes from the whips, and queens forced to push masters' babies from their hips while their kings are forced to sit helpless and watch this. And it was their masters who tried to convince them that this was right. A middle passage that lasted longer than most life, dashing through the cotton field, seeking freedom in the night. Death in the cotton field offers the only freedom in the light. And slowly, we begin to see things in a different light. Slowly, we begin to understand that every woman, child, and man has certain inalienable rights. I mean, Nat Turner and John Brown, they laid their life down when they took up the fight, and no one had to convince them that this was right. And here I sit in a cold sweat in this room in Tennessee, and it's just me, my God, and my destiny. And I'm looking to the heavens like, if this is thy will, then let it be. I will walk the same road as the shepherds who came ahead of me. I will carry the same load as the martyrs who died instead of me. Moses and Harriet Tubman, they led women, children, and men across burning sands and through swamp land to the freedom promised them. And I walked from Selma to Montgomery with a multitude behind me and an angry horde in front of me, with nothing but the strength of the Lord up under me and the weight of the world on my shoulders. But I will not backpedal, and I will not retreat. I will not concede defeat. I've seen the fate of those who've come before me. I've looked into the eyes of Hoover and those who abhor me. I've been arrested in Georgia. I'm detested in Tennessee, Alabama, and Mississippi. But if God be for me, who can stand against me? He's blessed me, and he's let me stand on Lincoln steps in the heart of DC and deliver a speech so passionate and unique about my dreams for equality, it reached my detractors and made them acknowledge me. Filled with so much truth, some of them began to follow me. I tell you, I have moved mountains with mere mustard seeds. And all that's left for me is what awaits on this balcony. I stand face to face with my destiny, and the irony is that no man really lives that long. But through my death, maybe this dream could live on. Through those of you who find the voice to sing freedom song, through those of you who speak of our struggles to your daughters and your sons, through those of you who pick up the baton and continue to race on, through those of you who understand that freedom is for all, or freedom is for none. Our fight is for the all, and our fight is for the one until God's will for us all be done. I tell you, I had a dream that I was alone in Tennessee, and it was just me, my God, and my destiny. Thank y'all so much for your time and attention. I really, 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 really appreciate all this wonderful, wonderful, wonderful energy and words. It's amazing. If you have any questions, and if we have time, I will take all questions.
Yeah, I will ask the questions. If people have to hop, then we'll have the recording as I mentioned. But if you can stay, we'll go through the questions. John, I just wanted to say thank you so much for this. I mean, the comments are coming in. I have heard you perform or see it so many times, and I'm just as, if not more moved than always. This was so wonderful. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
And thank you all for everyone who joined. We will share the recording out. So if you miss any part of it, you'll have it. And I think there will be some interesting points of discussion for us. So thank you all for your time and attention, but we'll get to some of the questions. So one of the questions that we had was, when do you know a poem is finished, like done and move on?
Poems are interesting. There comes a moment when you know, like you reached a point where you're ready to share it with the world. But the poems are interestingly kind of never done. Like the poem "Human" that I wrote a year ago, you will hear the name Dante Wright in that poem, which just happened recently because times evolve, the poems evolve, and sometimes they change a bit. The first poem I did, Barbara, that poem has changed in recitation more than the actual words. So if you would hear a recording of me doing it in 2000, it'll sound completely different than what you heard today. And when I hear a recording of me doing it in 2000, I say, why was I saying it like that? That is not how it is to be said. So it's interesting. The poems, the art evolves. This is artist, a crazy, amazing artist named Charlie Palmer. He's a painter. You may have seen his work on the cover of Time and Rolling Stone. I was at his studio having a conversation with him, and he says that when he makes a painting and sells it to someone, if he's in their home and sees the painting, he thinks to himself, "Oh, I should have done the hand different," or "Oh, I would have done the smile different." He was like, "And I'm so glad I sold it." He said, "Because if I didn't sell it, I would keep tinkering with it." He says, "Because the painting never feels done." I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, no, it absolutely did. And I heard Ray Charles said something like that. He's like, they're all, every single time, it doesn't matter how many thousands of times he performed, he's like, it is never the same.
Yeah.
You know? So that's interesting. Zena, I thought there was another question about, do you hear the poems in your head? Like, how does it sound to you? Because people commented on the musicality of it, and it was like, how does it sound to you in your head?
Yeah, it's as I'm writing it, I try to, in my head, it sounds conversational. Like when I write them the way I speak, so it feels like the way I talk. But then as I begin to perform them, like the stage and the audience sometimes informs the way that the words come out. So some of the rhythm and cadence of it evolves the more it's on stage in front of people. When people ask me like, how do I get good at spoken word poetry, or how do I get good at any kind of public speaking, I always tell them it's on the stage. You can practice in your mirror, but you can't like get good in your mirror. You can only get good on stage in front of people. You have to take that risk, and it's not as big of a risk as you might imagine. Then they're not gonna hurt you. They might not like it, but you're gonna survive it. So you just got to take the risk with your pride and your art and your words, and go out on stage and then create this moment together with the audience.
Okay, I could probably answer this by watching the recording, but one of the questions was, what was the second poem that you performed?
The second poem is called Human. Human is the second poem I did today, which there's a link. I think I still have it.
Yep,
Boom, I just put
it, and I'll send it in the follow-up to everybody. I grabbed it. Okay, thank you.
So it's called Human. Is with the version online is with me, Dr. Fahamu Peku, and cellist Okori Johnson.
Then the last question that I see, Zena, you can let me know if I've missed any, is have you ever performed or read a poem that isn't as successful as these, that were like a dud? That was
I've definitely had poems that didn't go the way I thought they would go. So I've only written what would be considered like an erotic poem once in my life, and it wasn't erotic. Everyone thought it was the funniest poem they've ever heard in their life. So it was successful, but not in the way I had intended. So the poems will definitely take some hard turns, but when you do a poem that doesn't go the way you hoped, the question is, one, did I not write it in the way that I thought I did? Two, and then two is like, did I not say it as I should have? Like sometimes it's just in the recitation. You're like, if I say it differently, then the room will react differently.
Right. Did I miss any, Zena? I'm scrolling back.
Let's see. I see one that says, your poetry is so emotionally raw and beautiful. Are you exhausted after performing? Yes. Often when I go on stage after you get a rush from the audience and from the performance, and it goes well. And then once you come down off of that and you're sitting home alone, you're wiped out. You're so tired. So even when I watch like a Beyonce perform, I'm like, how does she, night after night, this has got to be exhausting. Like her regimen must come with like some kind of lemon water and she must like bathe in the tears of virgins. I don't know what she does. It's got to be an incredible regimen that she goes through, but it's exhausting, but not like exhausting in a way where you're like, I don't ever want to do that again. It's such an outpouring of, I don't know, like emotion. It does leave you a bit tired.
And I can vouch for that because I called you last night and you were like, I performed earlier today. Please get off the phone.
Right. Here's another one. Who are some of the writers who have influenced, inspired you? Definitely James Baldwin. Anything James Baldwin writes is incredible. Langston Hughes, he has a collection of short stories called The Ways of White Folks. It's the best collection of short stories I've ever read. Definitely Octavia Butler, definitely Walter Mosley. you probably would find this odd, but early on in life, I was really into like those Anne Rice books. I used to love to read the writings of Anne Rice. I thought she was incredible to me. There was a woman named Elizabeth Peters who used to write kind of these Indiana Jones style Egyptian based books. I used to read a lot of her stuff. Donald Goines, who you may have never heard of, used to write this really gritty urban 1970s crime stories. He's probably like what was my gateway drug into like reading novels, was these Donald Goines books. Then I read, you know, tons and tons of comic books as a kid. I read tons and tons of these books called Choose Your Own Adventure. I used to love those books. So yeah, I used to read a lot of stuff, but yeah, those are some of the authors that really spoke to me. Oh, someone said any Gil Scott Heron. Definitely, of course, with Gil Scott, my introduction to Gil Scott is definitely through just listening, you know. So anything that Gil Scott did with a gentleman named Brian Jackson, you can buy any album that says Gil Scott and Brian Jackson, and your whole mind would be blown for the whole album. Everything they did together was just transformative. Winter in America, what's that other one? The one, the what, Midnight of a New Day. I forget the full title of that album, but anything with Gil Scott Heron and Brian Jackson, just buy it and listen to it. It's going to be incredible. I guarantee it.
All right. Well, thank you for hanging on. I just wanted to read a couple of the comments just so that you can see them. But so Kristen Piker, who's our VP of HR, said that she had tears at several points, all in the best way, and sent her thanks. People are saying that it was mind-blowing and more moved than they can express, and all of these sentiments are true, and we just thank you very, very much. Zena, thank you for riding with me as the co-host for this. We appreciate your time today. Thank you, everybody. We'll send a recording and a couple links to a couple of John's pieces. So the human that you sent, the long performance, but also someone asked for other videos. So John did send a few that we'll be sure to include in the follow-up. But thank you very, very much. This is a beautiful way to close out National Poetry Month. And so we thank you again for being with us.
Thank you all so much. I tried to see some of the comments as I could, but they were moving so fast, so I didn't see them all. But I thank you all for every comment, for all of this wonderful love, this outpouring. It has absolutely been my distinct honor and pleasure.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.